also known as the Jim McCarthy Voiceovers World Headquarters Studio. This is the JMVO Weekly Primer. Please subscribe, rate, and comment via jimmccarthyvoiceovers.com/podcast. This is episode 31 of the JMVO Weekly Primer. This is a podcast about making your life better through marinating your mind in good stuff. My name is Jim McCarthy, owner, operator, and chief bottle washer at jimmccarthyvoiceovers.com. I believe that as business owners, entrepreneurs, and overall salespeople, we are bombarded by negativity every day. That's the last thing we need. If you want to see your life and business change for the better, consume nurturing, good stuff. Actually got a sponsor for this week, which is very cool. Big.lighting.com, which is a company that does commercial, industrial, and manufacturing facility LED lighting upgrades. So if you have a facility, an auto dealership, an apartment complex, maybe you're a property manager, and you want either a capital or operational expense approach to converting your lights to LEDs, Big.lighting.com is where you need to go. Now, getting into episode 31, this guest that I'm about to bring on has been the first guest on the primer on going back to episode 1. We talked about risk exposure back then. I consider him to be one of the smartest people I've ever known. He's had a tremendous career when it comes to sales and selling and promotions, marketing. Started out working on cruise ships, I believe, where he really started cutting his teeth with DJing and things of that nature. Got into radio, and that's where he and I met in 2001 with Las Vegas KXNT and CBS radio out there. And then he went on to get more into selling radio and selling like conventions and things of that nature at hotels around town, but really started developing his path, getting into sales, marketing, and also business development with a lot of other companies, even going over for a spell in Dubai. And now he's always had an uncanny knack to explain things that a lot of people have trouble explaining, and I've always appreciated about him. Please welcome back to the program, the primer, Mr. Peter Sorensen. How you doing?
I'm good, Jim. How are you?
Not bad, not bad. So the premise of this show is advertising. You and I have a massive advertising background. The two questions, or the one question that everybody asks before they advertise is, okay, how do I know this is going to work? And you actually had a very funny response to that at one point. You said, I can guarantee two things. Mm-hmm. The spot will run, and we're going to charge you for it.
Yeah.
Those are the two guarantees that I have, and that's about it.
There's a third, actually. The third is, if you don't pay us, I will be coming back to collect from you, because that's how I get paid, my friend. So those are the three things I can guarantee you.
Yeah, if you don't pay us, we'll be hearing from me. But you and I had a conversation very interestingly, I'd say probably 6 to 12 months ago, about this technology you're kind of getting into. What if you could actually know what medium and what messaging, I guess you could say, will work for your particular type of business? Am I right?
Oh, yeah. It was pretty eye-opening that we have cracked the code of every small and mid-sized enterprise, and even on a more macro scale, large companies who might be franchises or just much larger organizations, to be able to crack the code on specifically traditional marketing, but also in digital, about being able to predict using big data, crowdsourced data, what will work, and with enough use, knowing it will work even before you pay for it.
And that's something that you're working on now, and you're kind of beta testing it.
We are. We're actually looking for about 30 or 40 businesses who are interested in taking advantage of this for, over a course of a year, and just providing some feedback. We're going to give them a tool that's going to be able to accurately track the most important metric that anyone who ever advertises is sales. It's not about clicks. It's not about walk-ups. It's not about impressions. It's not about any of that other nonsense. It's sales. I mean, let's be honest. Anybody who ever advertises wants their money back, and they want, a multiple of that money back. It's almost like when a bank decides to lend you money, they want to know the number one question. Are you going to pay me back? When are you going to pay me back? Is it worth enough money for me to give you this money? So my use of money is used effectively. So when I lend this to you, I'll know I'll get it back and it makes sense as an investment. The biggest break logically that businesses do, and it's mostly like the small and mid-sized enterprises, is they just take a risk and say, yeah, I don't have any expectation. I'm still going to do it anyway. And I'm thinking, well, shoot, you've just loaned money to a radio station, a TV station, a newspaper, digital billboards, whatever it is, without asking the questions that a bank would when you ask them for a loan. So we solved that with what we've created.
And what kind of mediums? I mean, they could be anything, right? Yes,
they can be anything. Now, digital pretends, I'm going to use air quotes, they pretend that they can give you all that tracking, but the thing is that their information is siloed. So for instance, if I go into an analytics account, I can look at how my traffic comes in and if something converts to a sale, but it gives you absolutely zero insight as to how I'm doing compared to others that I compete with or others that are complementary to what I do. And what we do is we've bridged that gap.
Mm-hmm. And how did you come across this?
I came across it through a colleague who I was working with on a project. It was actually for an Internet of Things company where I was helping build out a sales force for them and a go-to-market strategy. And he had discovered me and says, hey, I know you've got this background in advertising. He says, I have some as well, but I've come up with this really nifty little thing and I want to talk to you about it. And when he came to me, I went, wow, this is like the holy grail of what every small business and medium-sized business needs, is the ability to have predictive analytics on what they invest in. And it's not just about attribution, but like prediction. And at the time he had said, well, we'll do it in like an XYZ kind of way. And I said, well, if I can simplify it a little bit, what you're really trying to do is apply a credit score to the advertising mediums that are selling products to these businesses. And we have a way now to actually create a scoring methodology that a business can get ahead of and say, your score is not good enough for me to invest in. Your credit score in terms of your results based on big data tells me that you're not a good investment for me to lend my money to, because it's really lending money. It's when you advertise, you want it back.
So it's a really refined way to assess which medium is going to work the best for a particular kind of business.
Yes, but with the most important metric, sales.
Right.
People don't want to say, well, I had a lot of people show up. And you remember the old days, Jim, when you'd get a car dealer and say, hey, I need 150 or 200 people to show up. Well, that's easy. Just buy some pizza and give out some toys. And, you get all kinds of, broke, people on food stamps coming out and getting free food and stuff. But did they make a sale? No. So, yeah, it's not about that. It's really about how what you did correlates to a sale. And then more importantly, what your return on investment is compared to others that you compete with locally, regionally, and nationally. So you actually have a benchmark as to whether you did good or did you just do okay. Or did you do terrible, but you still made money, but others are doing it better? And we have ways for them to be able to learn what others are doing so they can improve what they're doing in a non-competitive fashion, because all of the data is crowdsourced, but it's anonymized, and it's not designed to give any business any trade secrets, but it's just large data that's put into a very simple silo that somebody can then look at and say, well, I'm hearing that a pizza place, in Waukegan, Illinois, is doing X, Y, and Z, and I'm, a couple of cities away, but why would it make sense for me to do that? But you won't know who that other person is. But you'll be able to have that kind of insight to know that when the radio or the TV rep shows up, you could say, well, I have data on what this type of medium is, and my research says that this will not work. And then the sales rep goes, well, how do you know that? And you go, here, it's on my phone. You want to take a look at it? Your credit score is terrible.
But I mean, they could even use that for negotiating as well, I would imagine.
100%. So, our algorithm that we've developed actually creates something that does kind of look like a credit score. So if you go to those credit reporting sites and you'll see something that kind of looks like a speedometer or an odometer, and you'll be able to tell what your performance is based on those mediums, how it compares to others in the market. So when that poor radio rep comes in and says, hey, we've got the greatest idea for you, it's like, well, here is how you rate. And you can see this is kind of like a credit score, and it goes between 300 and 850, and your medium right now is about a 400. So I don't know why I would trust you with my money, because your ability to deliver the result back to me is compromised, much like somebody who has bad credit trying to get a loan from somebody. So I'm going to loan you this money. I want to do my due diligence, and my due diligence says that this doesn't work. However, I might, and this is the negotiating side, take a risk. But since the fact that you're a third as good as somebody else, I want to pay a third as the price, because I need to see if this proves to be working in my case.
And that's it doesn't. We're not saying that radio is a bad play at all. It's just for some businesses it may not be. You know, it may not be the right fit. You know, a flyer drop might be the best answer for something like that.
A sign spinner, anything. Yeah.
Yeah, a sign spinner. Do you even have that on there? Is that part of the medium, sign spinning?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
So what's the scope and breadth of time that you're measuring for all this data? How far back does it go that you're coming to your conclusions?
Well, it can go back infinity. So obviously, since we're at the beginning, a lot of the data is going to be brand new, but everything is done on a weekly basis because the one thing I was talking to my colleague on is that people grade themselves on a weekly basis. Daily could be done, but most people are saying, okay, I spent this much in advertising. What did I make this week? And then from there, all of our algorithms are built to kind of do weighted scoring of, you know, sales that may occur later. But essentially, once you're in this and you're using it for a couple of weeks, you'll be able to, first of all, track what you're spending, which is amazing because most businesses don't. And second, as they continue to put in more data points and others in the same industries put in data points, they're going to get more precise, accurate predictions of what their future investments will look like as well. And that's why I say eventually with use, you'll be able to know if it's going to make you money even before you decide to spend it. Now,
we obviously didn't hit the obvious points here. Let me just reiterate that. What is this thing called? Is there a name for it? Anything that people can touch and feel yet? Or when's it going to be rolled out?
Yeah, I mean, it's rolling out now. And we were looking for, you know, beta testers for this, and there's going to be no cost for that. It's called TrueScore. Mm-hmm. And they can visit truescore.io. The IO is kind of the cool new domain now. So it's truescore.io, where they can learn more about what this is. And from there, they can schedule some time to speak with us. We're going to just ask a few questions for this beta test to make sure this makes sense. You know, we're looking for people who advertise. And ideally, we're looking for people who consistently advertise. So, you know, if you're lending money out to mediums, you know, day in and day out, you know, we want to be able to help you track that and be able to create better scoring. And it goes much deeper than this. So the plans for TrueScore are not just to score what you're doing and getting scores from others, but eventually being able to download tactics that others are using that are non-competitive to you, so you can actually refine, you know, your approach. If somebody else has done something and you tried something that was different and they're succeeding, you actually can gain some knowledge transference from non-competitive people. And then eventually what's going to happen is it's going to become a programmatic advertising platform where somebody is able to buy advertising, score their advertising, and then when they look at their score and say, in your market, for what you do, radio is your best option, and you can buy this radio station or this group of radio stations programmatically right here, click buy now, and take care of the transaction.
Taking the salesperson out of it. I guess it would go to a account rep or somebody.
Yeah, I mean, but it could. So, you know, but the leverage eventually is going to be us going to these major broadcasting companies, local broadcasting companies, bringing in their inventory at a normal price. So it's not about selling remnant. It's not about, you know, killing them on rate, because what we're trying to do is just becoming an appropriate channel for somebody who has trusted us, you know, with all of this data to be able to just make the purchase and keep a person who is in there just trying to convince them on emotion or non-analytical data to make a purchase. It'll be easier for those mediums as well, because they'll just be getting money from us, and you know, we'll pass the savings on to them if those platforms decide they want to compete for the business, especially if their scores are low. So if you're in a market,
this has nothing to do with the radio stations or anybody trying to get your business as an agency, because it's almost like an agency play, but Switzerland in a way.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's kind of a quasi e-commerce play. You know, we're there to help create programmatic platforms down the road, but it's going to be with informed information and data. This has legs that goes even deeper to that. So let me give you a scenario. So say you're a business and you're brand new and you want to set up shop in a strip mall in a town near, you know, wherever you are, and maybe the leasing company says, you know, you're kind of on the fence in terms of how you're actually going to drive traffic to this, because we don't want somebody to come in for a couple of months and bomb out. But if you decide to use TrueScore and match it up with your marketing plans, because you say you're going to go spend money on all this stuff, but you agree to at least look at TrueScore's data, We're going to go ahead and approve your application and allow you to take space in our strip mall because we know that you're making more informed decisions. And we know that most businesses, when they first start out, have no insight. And so they blindly just buy advertising, think it drives traffic. So strip malls hate that. They want people to succeed. So they'll say, on the condition that you use this product and you are doing it in good faith, we're going to take a risk when we normally would reject your application to be able to get a space in our strip mall.
Now, you have a vast experience with marketing and advertising. What was the most surprising thing and a discovery that you came about with using this technology?
Yeah, no, lots. I mean, because it's the ability to actually know what you're doing and what the result was in terms of sales. Again, most people are just advertising and then they kind of look at their total receipts at the end of the week. And that's the argument a lot of people make. It's like, well, if you make $100 more than you did last week with what we did, then it worked. It's more than that. So, the aha moment for me was being able to put in data and looking at this and saying, wow, I can actually see on one single screen what performed better than somebody else. And with our test data, being able to theoretically say, I did okay, but I didn't do as good as somebody else who does this. What's missing?
Yeah.
So
was there any sort of medium tied to a certain business that did better than what you thought it would be, or worse than traditionally thought?
Right. So we did have a couple of instances where through this testing we were like, well, that's interesting. We would have thought that would have performed better, and it turned out not to be the case. I could probably provide some case studies. I just didn't bring any with me today for that. But yeah, it is surprising when people think, well, TV is the way to do this, or the newspaper's the way to do this, and we just saw in some cases that just really wasn't the case. So that was an eye opener for me.
How do collision shops fare? I have a buddy of mine who's been, just throwing money blindly at the wall trying to figure out what's going to work. I mean, is there any data for that silo of business or that vertical?
There is, and that's where the more people that we get into the system, the more refined it becomes. Most businesses like collision shops, if they're shotgunning, that's a disaster. But most people are buying more media than they need to. You know that businesses like collision shops have trading zones, and maybe it's like 10 miles before there's another one. And so but if they're buying traditional media, they may be buying a much wider area, and that's going to be reflected in cost. So if somebody buys, say a Valpak or some money mailer or one of those kinds of things, and they're buying too many zip codes, what they're going to see is that their ROI on their investment is going to be off. And then when they look at others that are doing the similar thing, they can come back and say, what's missing? And then they can discover from us that other competing shops shops that are not competing with them, but in other areas, are not buying as wide of an area. And they're producing better results because the ROI is higher, because it costs less to reach a smaller area than buying a larger area that you didn't need in the first place. And you were just sold that because the person who sold it to you just wanted a larger commission.
Well, the reason why I bring up collision shops is because it's a branding play for them. Nobody wants to need them, but when they do need them, it helps when they can recall who they heard of. We have a local collision shop here that's got a very catchy jingle, and I'm convinced that that's probably what built his business over the past since I think he probably started it in '97. So it's a really catchy jingle tied into the fact that he just constantly is on radio. Yeah. But I don't know. I just think in those situations, that is there any getting back to the case studies, how many other businesses have you done this with so far?
We've been in the automotive category. We've been in food, beverage, professional services, people like attorneys, financial planners. As this stage, it's still relatively new, but we've got about 9 different categories, which includes about 50 different specific businesses that we're targeting for this. That kind of covers everything from home repair to medical to the professional services that I mentioned to where do you want to go out to eat to how do you fix your car. That's obviously a category as well. Right. But going back to the collision side of it, branding is always a part of something, but at the same time, just because you're spending money on branding should not assume that you shouldn't be making money while doing it. People who need car repair or like collision repair, there's a couple of different, in my opinion, a couple of different ways this can go. I mean, somebody has a serious accident and their car is not movable, they need to get it repaired now. And so, brand recognition can help somebody make a decision, albeit it'll be limited. But there are people that have dings and dents on their cars all the time, and they may just say, "Oh, I finally got my tax refund. It's time to go do this." They don't necessarily think of the immediacy of somebody with a brand. They're going to be looking for value because they have time to shop. Right. So it's kind of two sides to what you just said there, but we can help in either case, because even if somebody is branded, they should still have an expectation of sales one way or the other. And if you have collision shops that are doing that in a similar fashion, you can still compare what your performance looks like based on sales to others, because if they're all doing the same thing, you should be able to look at it and say, okay, how did I compare based on the amount of money I spent to this other person? And then more importantly, if I'm not, I can actually view a tactic from a non-competing business to see what they did that helped that same amount of money produce better revenue than what I did with the same amount of money. And that's what TrueScore's platform does. It's just big data that's easier to consume, and it allows people to have just an insight they hadn't had before. And it's digital or analog.
Well, that's what I was going to ask next. Based on all the traditional mediums out there, there's also networking groups, chambers of commerce, and things of that nature. Does it take those into account, the hand-to-hand combat marketing, if you will, networking?
It isn't something that we explored. We haven't explored up to date, but theoretically, yes. But the idea is to kind of quantify hard money investment. So if somebody, like somebody's in a BNI group or, other groups like that, there's a cost that goes into that, and it is trackable, but it isn't something that we immediately focused on. But if we find through our additional testing that need is there, it can be opened up. The platform is definitely scalable, and it's adjustable to that. But it wasn't something I think we considered at the beginning, or what I refer to as like referral business. But if somebody has puts a quantify on that and says, I joined a chamber of commerce, I spent $10,000 this year. Yeah, there'd be a way to track that. But I don't know in the near term how that would necessarily compare with others who did the exact same thing. It's a little too specific, but it's theoretically possible. It's just something we hadn't considered.
Well, some of the gurus out there that are masters of, let's say, for example, Roy Williams, who the Wizard of Ads. He's a huge proponent of radio for a reason. It's always what's worked for him and his clients. Is this a technology that is kind of going to challenge his stance on things?
No, what it does is it keeps the mediums honest. And by honest, I'm not saying that these companies go in with the intent of causing harm to their clients, but what they do in a lot of cases, and especially if they're smaller operators, is they put people out on the street who are human beings. They may not compensate them to keep them forthright with a client. And when you've got somebody who's in there selling a product who's interested on closing as opposed to serving and making sure that this is the best decision for the client, they will use tactics to get people to move to a sale. So TrueScore can keep somebody, can give them that shield to make sure that the decision was honestly reached. So as well as I do, if you've got a salesperson who's trying to hit a target, their need for you will shift because their self-interest comes into play. There aren't many people who say, well, my self-interest is second. And they should be. But if they're coming in with their own self-interest, but they disguise it in a way that the business owner is not aware of, TrueScore actually equals that out and says, well, whatever you're telling me and however you're making me feel doesn't match the data that's here. And it gives them a chance to pause and make a better decision based on data as opposed to gut. And that's what we're trying to eliminate, is as much of the gut feeling that a business needs to be equipped with, in this day and age, because they're just not given enough data. And when they're given data, like in digital, it's only their data. Their data doesn't tell a big enough story. They want to know other people's data to be able to tell a better story.
What kind of businesses are you looking for to do beta testing on?
Honestly, just about anything. But people who consistently advertise would be one, because if somebody says, hey, I advertise once a year, not a good fit, because there's really no way to track. But people who consistently advertise, in traditional media, who are just left in a day-and-day basis going, I don't know if any of this stuff works. That's a huge hit. If you're not spending at least a couple grand a month on something, probably not a good fit. But beyond that, just about any type of business that relies on some form of direct response to a sale. Now, super large conglomerate corporations who spend years trying to get you used to, a character, or the gecko or the clown or all of these other things. The data is valuable, but not probably so much for a beta. It's just people who say, I spend $5,000 a month. I do garage door service. I'm in 4 15 different things a month. I have no insight as to what works. And I'd like to know what some of my people who do what I do for a living, do and what works. So, there's really no limit, but in terms of the beta, anybody who spends money consistently, who has competitors, so they're not a single operator in a city, and wants to be able to get insight from people who are out of their trading zone. It could be really anyone, insurance salespeople. It could be, hairdressers, food places, home repair, car repair, medical, all the things that we normally do and consume, on a weekly, monthly, or yearly basis when we have to, as customers, decide I need to take care of something. It's pretty much anybody.
I would imagine even B2B businesses would work too.
Yeah, no, of course. Anytime where there's an idea of having to promote using money and they want to know a return on investment and be able to benchmark against others in their field in a non-competitive way, yeah, they definitely want to talk to us.
Would agencies be a good hookup for you guys?
Absolutely. And that's actually phase 2. So once we have all of this data, we can roll this data up on a more macro scale. So I'll give you an example. So Jim, you own a sandwich shop and you sell sandwiches, and then there's like 5 other people in your city that you don't compete against, that sell sandwiches. And all of you guys have gotten together to be able to benchmark what you're doing. So this is just one city. Amplify that up to 150 cities across the country. I would think that eventually a chain would be interested in that, and not the chain, but maybe the agency for that chain, saying we have aggregated data of people across the country, and we're not going to share with you precisely who all these people are, but these are the mediums that they're using in order to create the best ROI for their sandwich shop. You could think of Subway, would definitely be interested in that. Any of the other major chains and their ad agencies would. It could also be used for aggregated data to just blow up what a city looks like. So if somebody's trying to launch and they have a mass appeal product, all of the data points that we're bringing on a weekly basis could be used for them to make better buying decisions in conjunction with other tools that they use to decide, what is the propensity of these people, to make a buying decision. So it just gives them just stronger data.
I hope you're going to be the spokesperson for this thing when you guys roll it out.
Yeah, this call today was kind of a coin toss. Joseph and I, working on this, and he's got a couple other folks that are pretty super smart. Actually, kind of an interesting story. Our advisor on the technology level is actually pretty famous, and he is the guy who invented back in 2000, I think it was in 2003, during the Iraq War when we went after Saddam Hussein. Do you remember that deck of cards that showed all of the people that we tried to get, and they would hand them out to kids and stuff? Yeah. He invented that.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, super smart cat. And so, really what we're trying to do now is just get it out into the marketplace, get the ecosystem. We've got investors that are interested in talking with us. They just want to see a little bit more data. And so, we think we've got a really cool thing, and it addresses, again, what we've talked about many, many, many eons ago when you and I worked together in Las Vegas, at CBS. It's like, how do we actually just tell these people everything's going to be okay? And it's like, we can't. Yeah. We just can't. This addresses that, and it will empower people. I envision a day when somebody a sales rep walks into a business, and on the cash register of this business, it says, "Media rep, have you checked your true score?" And they're going to walk in and know that, and they're going to walk back out if they know they aren't doing well. And if they're walking in and they're doing well, they're going to go, "My score is awesome. I want to talk to you." So that's super empowering. And if it's bad, they're going to go back to their boss and say, "Why is our score so terrible?" And then that person's going to contact us and say, "Can we talk to you about what's missing and what's happening here? Because we want to improve that score, because we want these people to not, put up a barrier on us." So it really helps all sides. It's about helping the business owner. It's also helping the medium. If the medium in the market is not performing well, it may not be because the medium's broken. It's just because it could be a training issue. It could be that you're sending out salespeople who are trying to sell to businesses and getting them to close that weren't a fit. And that's why your score is low. So adjust to that, fix that, improve that score, give better results to people. So then you're walking into the right businesses where you score really well, and the sales process should be much, much smoother. So, we're just kind of a third-party arbiter, of the process, and eventually becoming kind of the credit score of advertising.
TrueScore.io. This is going to be an app?
It is. It's on Android right now. We have an iOS version that's coming out. And what's kind of cool about this as well, just something to add, is that if a business owner, is like, dude, I'm just too busy to input data. I don't want to do any of this stuff. They literally can just bring us in and say, we'll do it for you. So if a business owner says, I've got all this, here's all my invoices, here's my sales, here's all this stuff I got from the various places that I advertise in. Can you just make sense of it? Put it in there for me, and then I can look at it. It's like, absolutely. And we've got people that can do that. For the beta test, we'd kind of like them to be hands-on, just so we want the user experience. But ultimately, if somebody says, yeah, I'll do this, but I don't want to touch this, I just want to look at the answer, we can. Down the road, once this scales into a larger business, that'll be more of a concierge style service. But we're willing to do that to help people as well, because we want them to use it and get the benefits out of it.
See, I would think that the mediums would be a good play to try and get money out of them for using the service, but I guess it's more of a business centric thing, so they could analyze their advertising dollars. Well,
no, who's to say they wouldn't? And so the idea down the road is that once we've got a large enough amount of this data, and we start going into a play where these people are making buying decisions through our platform, I pretty much guarantee that the smart ones will say, can we communicate with these people and get them to contribute data? Because we know we have wins. They just haven't done it. It's like, absolutely. Yeah, be part of that process. Be a part of the process of actually doing the thing that when you got hired, to do, is to actually help and serve your customer. Yeah, why not? That probably won't happen at the beginning. They'll probably look at it and say, oh, well, whatever. But once they lose a deal, or they realize that we're selling more of something versus theirs, they're going to say, well, shoot, we need to help our clients be better at contributing this data. It snowballs from there. So, Of course, we want to help everybody. It's not really about, hey, we're going to stick it to you. It's like, no, we're just trying to be honest. Just like a bank would be when a bank says, I'd love to give you that $10,000 loan. You have a credit score of 450. We're going to help you try to improve that score, and then we want you to come back. That's essentially where we're going to go with it. It's like, you're this medium, you're not performing well here. We'll ask the business owners and figure out what's going on, and we'll give you the advice. No problem.
Well, a lot of getting back to the auto dealer that we discussed earlier, a lot of them do get hit up constantly by several people over the course of a day, a week. I was just talking to a buddy of mine yesterday who knows an owner of a dealership here, a local Nissan dealer, and he even said that, sitting in the office with this guy, it's like a constant barrage of people, either problems or somebody wants to sell him something, or, so he's like a full-time fireman. He's putting out fires constantly. Yeah. What kind of businesses aren't good fits for this? Meaning, like you had mentioned, that sometimes the sales process is broken. The advert, they're bringing butts in, but they're not converting, that kind of thing. So the automotive business, from my experience, I would imagine that's probably, it depends on if they do training and make sure that the salespeople know how to sell and all that stuff.
Yeah, I mean, those are certainly variables that come into play, but they use other metrics. So in terms of their own internal training, they can look at the number of, what is that phrase, ups that somebody gets at a car dealer, and if they look at what they're doing, and then they're able to benchmark against what others are doing in a similar fashion, and they're not performing, it's two things. In that case, it's the medium, and it's also an internal sales process. The internal sales process, they're going to have to look at and say, first, well, we're getting a number of ups, and we're not converting the sales. This organization over here is doing something in a similar fashion, not competing with us, and they are getting the sales. So yeah, sometimes you have to look in and make sure that these people are being trained properly. There could be that. I don't know if that's going to be the overriding factor. So, I mean, businesses that don't get the fact that when somebody walks into a business, you need to make a sale, we're not there to fix that. That should be kind of organic. They should know that, we brought you somebody, or somebody's been brought to you. You need to serve them and bring them to a conclusion that's best for them, and help them with the decision. But if they're complete flakes at that, nothing's going to fix them. This is just another tool. It's kind of like buying a treadmill, and you use it to hang your towels on, right? I mean, you have to make sure you're in shape, right? So I don't think there's any businesses that don't. But if their sales process is broken, this data is going to show that. But in terms of training their people, we could probably refer them to somebody that could help. But it wouldn't be us saying, hey, your sales team stinks. That's really not it. It's just the data.
It's like a business DNA anal probe.
I like to say credit score, because it's just easier. It doesn't use the word anal, but yeah.
Analprobe.io was taken.
Yes. Apparently, those Russian hackers, they took it before I was about ready to click buy on GoDaddy. So no, but honestly, if you just look at this very simply, a business is lending money to an advertising medium with the expectation of being paid back with interest. It's as simple as that. A bank does the exact same thing. A bank makes a decision through underwriting. Underwriting uses a credit score. Businesses should use scoring to underwrite a loan that they're going to give to their local medium to ensure that they're going to get their money back and get it back with interest. That's what TrueScore is. TrueScore is an algorithm that allows them to do their underwriting before they make a decision. And no matter how cute or how smart or how happy or energetic the person is talking across the counter, they can look at cold hard data and then decide whether they're going to underwrite this loan to that local TV, to that local newspaper, to that local flyer company, whatever it is. That's what we do.
And it takes into consideration the message and how it's crafted.
Of course. Yep. And that's where the ability of businesses to be able to actually download tactics and gain intelligence on that, from people they're not competing against. Mm-hmm.
So the some of the other mediums, Pandora, Spotify, even podcasts, how do those measure up, like, from what you're saying?
In the same manner, because if you are a business and you're using Pandora or streaming or the local radio station streams or whatever it is, you're going to get data, but you're not getting crowdsourced data on what others are doing with it. So it's silo. So you're going to get all the information. Like Google's great at siloed data. Facebook's great at siloed data. Pandora is great at siloed data, but they don't open up the door to allow others who are doing similar things in similar industries and don't give you any insight about what they're doing. We're going to do that in an anonymized fashion, and that data is stronger because you're only as good as you think. So if you have siloed data, you're like, hey, I'm doing pretty good. Yeah, but you don't know what someone else who's not competing against you, who does what you do, is doing with the exact same amount of effort. That's what's been missing all along in all platforms. Now, we talk a lot about analog, but digital's just as much of a flaw with that as well, because there's nobody who's crowdsourcing this data. We will eventually have about 30 to 50,000 businesses across the country that will be doing this. That data will be stronger than anyone's data platform if it's just their own siloed data.
Well, Peter, how do businesses that are interested, that hopefully we've generated some interest, that want to be a part of the beta process, how do they get in touch with you to get that going?
Yeah, it's pretty simple. So all you have to go to is TrueScore, TrueScore, TrueScore.io, TrueScore.io. You'll see a little explainer video talks about what we do. There's a way to reach us there. You can sign up for our beta program. And what happens after that is we will reach back out to you for a completely non-committed strategy call. So what we're going to do with these folks is we're going to spend about 10 minutes. We're going to ask them a couple questions. There's no selling because it's free. So we're going to be giving you the access to this for up to a year. And we'll explain what this works, how it correlates to what they do in terms of the business. And if they're ready to go, we'll go ahead and get them set up with the app, walk them through how to set it up. And then we're there to support the process for whatever they happen to encounter. But we're here to help them with that. And I think what they're going to get out of it is just insight into data and their ad spend and what it means to them more than they've ever even thought possible. So it's as simple. Just go to TrueScore.io. And then from there, we'll just hop on a call. And Joseph and I are super cool. So we're not there to do anything more than just help.
Well, how did you position that? It wasn't no obligation call. How did you phrase that? That was really interesting.
Zero obligation?
No, it was like, you said it was like a zero commitment type of...
Yeah, because it's a zero... it's a zero commitment call, because what we're saying is this: we want to make sure this is a fit for you. So if you contact us, we're not going to reach out and say, "Oh my gosh, you have to do this." It's like, let me just ask you some questions. And if we say, based on what your answer is, this isn't a fit, we're not saying you can't do it. But what we're saying is we're not going to try to make you do anything. If you went, wow, that may be more than I thought, or yeah, maybe I'm not ready yet, or I only advertise 2 times a year, or that's what I'm saying. So, but what you're going to get from the call from us is, if we have an idea that can help you outside of what we're going to do with our app, we're going to give it to you. There's no commitment or obligation with that either. So it's just a friendly conversation, make sure there's a fit, and we're going to give you a tool that's going to be super helpful for you over the next 12 months. And all we want back is feedback. And if you like it, ideally some social proof saying, hey, we like this, maybe a quick iPhone hit and saying, hey, this is great. I really appreciate you doing this. And then we just take that information internally, and that helps us grow our business when we go full launch.
I think eventually we got to talk about maybe how I invest in something like this or be a part of the process.
You already are, man. That's why we're talking. There we are.
Sounds like you got a winner.
I think so too.
Yeah. Well, guys, that you're listening. In the description section, we'll put all that information there. Also put the ways that you can follow Peter and his musings and things of that nature. Again, one of the smartest guys I know that I think I always derive a tremendous amount of value every time we talk to him. So if you are listening to the podcast, please share it, subscribe, like, comment, rate, all that good stuff. You can find it at jimmccarthyvoiceovers.com/podcast. Of course, sponsored this week by big.lighting.com for all your LED lighting needs in terms of, I can't believe I actually just said that, for all your blank needs. For commercial and industrial manufacturing facility LED upgrades, hit us up, big.lighting.com. This has been the JMVO Weekly Primer, episode 31. Thank you so much, Peter Sorensen, for being on, and definitely check them out at TrueScore, True. I was thinking in my mind TRUSC, but it's not that. It's TRUE, the proper spelling, score.io, correct?
Let me check now. You just made me nervous. Hold on. Yes, I'm kidding. It's TRESCORE.io.
Right on. Well, thank you so much for being on again, and we'll have you on in another 30 episodes.
Okay, sounds good. It's been a pleasure. I appreciate it.
Right on, man.
This is the JMVO Weekly Primer. Please subscribe, rate, and comment via jimmccarthyvoiceovers.com /podcast.